Welcome back to my channel, the best place for millennial professionals who feel stuck in their careers to find their dream careers. In this video, I'm going to talk about the glass ceiling. Now, the glass ceiling is largely used to describe the predicament women face in the workplace, but it also applies to other groups, such as immigrants and ethnic minorities as well. So in this video, I'm going to dive into the reasons why the glass ceiling exists for immigrants and also what can be done about it. Be sure to stick around until the end to learn how immigrants can find success in the corporate world in the West. Also, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell to receive regular updates on all things related to bringing positive change to your career. Hi, I'm Dr. John Tam, and I'm passionate about helping ambitious millennial professionals build their dream careers. So without further ado, let's talk about the immigrant glass ceiling and its impact upon immigrants. Now, my first point is that there's a very clear economic penalty. Only approximately 6% of the executives in the Greater Toronto area are immigrants with undergrads from non-English speaking countries. And so when we're talking about non-English speaking countries, there is a clear difference between the US, Canada, UK, and Australia in terms of minorities with undergrads from those countries, because they're fundamentally treated differently since their obstacles are also quite different. Now, between the ages 35 to 44, the income disparity between immigrants and their Canadian counterparts is approximately 25%. By 45 to 54 years old, their income is almost 40% less. This essentially becomes a double jeopardy if the immigrant is a female. So essentially they're earning 70 to 75 cents to the dollar of the average Canadian male. Now, this type of information has been well documented by Professor Riza Hazmath at the University of Alberta, who is my friend, and he's also the author of the book Ethnic Penalty that studies the problems immigrants face in the workplace in terms of the economic disparity and also the types of discrimination and the obstacles they face. However, before you think this video is going to be a long spiel about discrimination in the workplace, I do want to emphasize that these are mechanisms in society. So we're not talking about only American society or Canadian society. We're also talking about, what ethnic minorities may face in China, for example, right? So if you are a white person that goes to China, you too will earn 75 cents to the dollar of a Chinese person because of the same mechanisms, right? If you are a white person moving to Africa and you're working in an African workplace, you too will face those obstacles. So these are universal mechanisms. I'm not going to dismiss it as language discrimination or racial discrimination. Even though those do exist, there are other forces in play. So in terms of income, there's approximately a $16,000 gap between European earners and non-European earners. And visible minorities continue to be overrepresented in the low-wage occupations and underrepresented in managerial positions. So essentially, if you're to take a quick summary on this point, immigrants are getting paid less, approximately 75 cents to the dollar. Now, my second point is there's also an employment penalty, and the employment penalty is in terms of the labor force participation rates, right? So European Canadians are 83% employed versus non-Europeans, who are approximately 76.5% in terms of their labor force participation rate. And this gap may be explained by ethnics pursuing more education for a higher payout, or can also be co-explained by frustration or just quitting, right? Within the at-risk groups, which is approximately 4% of the Toronto population, or 183,000 people, there's a higher undergraduate attainment at 21.8%, and the graduate attainment is at 8.4%. But at the same time, they only have approximately 70% in terms of their labor market participation. At the same time, they have a very alarming 10.5% unemployment rate. So only 0.8% are employed as high-level managers, only 11.2% are employed as mid-level managers, and only 15.1% are categorized as professionals. Their mean salary is $34,000, and it's nearly $20,000 less than Europeans. All these stats are actually after removing the Chinese, because the Chinese group in Toronto would actually skew the data further negatively since they have a high participation rate in the secondary labor market with low paying jobs, right? And secondary labor market are jobs that are part-time, contract-based, and basically leads to underemployment. So in other words, those numbers are actually much worse than they appear. By the way, the Chinese have their own term called the bamboo ceiling, which I'll talk about in my future videos. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for when it comes out. So actually, if all those numbers went over your head, the main takeaway is that ethnic minorities and immigrants actually have a lower labor force participation rate, which means they are less employed, they are more underemployed, and they are paid less, and they are also in managerial and leadership positions far less. There are numerous explanations for this gap, but discrimination and language barriers cannot account for all of this. And there are other more probable reasons, which I'll discuss in the next video on the glass ceiling. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for when it comes out. Do you find these stats alarming? Let me know in the comments below. Now, my third point is that certain immigrants are hit more than others. And that's just simply the immigrant reality. It's worse than it looks because we are only measuring those in the primary labor market. So those are, you could call it the mainstream workforce or whatnot. When we look at immigrants, there are typically 4 types of immigrants. There's the family class, there's the economic immigrants, which would include business class, which would be the entrepreneurs and investors, and also the professional class, which would be immigrant or skilled workers. The third class is the humanitarian and compassionate class, and then the fourth class is the refugee class. Now, investment immigrants tend to have the capital to live very transnational lives, so they don't even have to stick around or even work. Their means of income generation is also mostly in investments, and it's difficult to track given their transnational portfolio and ties. Refugees, on the other hand, get stuck in the secondary labor market and black markets, right? And those are the places that systematically keep you in your place because of the poverty and the lack of opportunities for advancement. Now, for the professional class, it's harder for them to pack up their bags and leave. They are skilled at what they do. They have a lot of hard skills, but they also typically enter the workforce at entry-level jobs, despite working at a mid to high level job in their country of origin. So essentially, when they come to the West, they are taking a hit. And there is almost always an immigration penalty, and this has been well documented. There are numerous reasons for this. One common reason is that they lack the network and know-how to get into the primary labor market or mainstream work. But they also run the risk of being overqualified for low-level jobs. And if they take it, they end up being underemployed, which is defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary as the condition in which people in the labor force are employed at less than full-time or regular jobs, or jobs inadequate with respect in terms of their training or their economic needs. As a result, many immigrants actually turn to entrepreneurship or starting a small business, which has risks of its own in terms of survival. And ironically, these ethnic businesses often hire in their ethnic communities and reinforce their own ethnic hiring cycle. And research shows that there is greater implicit understanding of work ethics and cultural values, resulting in greater trust. So basically, a lot of immigrants come over to North America, and because they lack the social capital to break into the primary labor market, they then create their own business and hire others who are similar to themselves. And as a result, a lot of ethnically based businesses are formed, and they stay ethnically based because that's what the trust is, right? It's the cultural norms. It's everyone agreeing to certain values, and also the very practical part of speaking a certain language and just being able to function in that language. Now, for jobs in the primary labor market, companies hire for skills, fit, and experience in different orders, right? Some companies may prioritize one over the other. Immigrants may eventually enter the primary labor force, but at the same time, they will generally face the next problem. And the next problem is they will struggle to get promoted to the management level because they are perceived to lack the right soft skills. And I talk about this at length with Professor Riza Hazmath in this card above, and so check it out if you are interested. Now, basically though, the baseline is this: the higher you go, the more important soft skills and trust becomes. Which brings us to our fourth point, which is immigrants typically face underemployment and overeducation. And oftentimes, immigrants would think that in order to overcome this, they need to actually get more credentials and get more education to compensate for this. Now, whether or not going back to school will actually be helpful actually doesn't solve the problem that I presented in my last point, right? It's basically the lack of social capital, the lack of networks, and the lack of soft skills in the West that really makes it difficult for immigrants to climb that ladder. And so Interestingly enough, this whole ethic of getting more education is passed on to the next generation. Interestingly enough, the second generation generally does not like working in the ethnic job market. However, ironically, sometimes mature ethnic job markets actually have higher economic returns than the primary labor market, as we are finding now with ethnic groups in North America, such as the Chinese or Korean communities, right? It's actually possible to make more money in those ethnic communities than in the primary labor market. And ethnic and immigrant bubbles aren't actually anything new, as we found with immigrants such as the Jewish community or the white Europeans in the Irish and Italians and Germans back in the 50s and 60s. And to sum up the immigrant glass ceiling, immigrants typically face an economic penalty. They face an employment penalty. They face a situation where certain groups are hurt more than others. And they also typically face underemployment and overeducation as well. In my next video, I'm going to provide solutions for immigrants on how to break the glass ceiling. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for when it comes out. But I'll give you a quick teaser here, and the answer involves developing soft skills that are suited for your personality. And so if you want to understand your personality, the best standard out there is the Big 5 personality traits, and you can take a free, quick, and accurate one in the comments below. Also, make sure to join my Facebook group, Career Change Advice, to be in a community of people interested in making their careers work for them rather than the other way around. Also, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts about this video. Don't forget to give it a like and share it with your network if you found this to be valuable. I hope to see you in the next video where I teach you how to smash the immigrant glass ceiling.